Hello, my name is Vasil Kupov, and this is my video on solving polynomial inequalities with graphs. So the first equation that we have right here is x squared plus 3x is greater than 10. Okay. We want the right side of this equation to be 0. So to do this, we did x squared plus 3x minus 10. So basically we just subtracted the 10. And that would be greater than 0. And then from here, we have to do the AC method. As we see here, we do negative 10 times x, his coefficient is 1. So we do 1 times negative 10 equals negative 10, obviously. And then we find two different things that multiply to negative 10 and add to 3x. And 5x plus negative 2, or 5 times negative 2, equals that, and all checks out. So then we will have to group here. So then we do x squared plus 5x, parentheses, and then parentheses negative 2x minus 10 is greater than 0. And then first, let's see what we can take out of this situation. We can take out of an x. So yeah, we just take that out from both of these. And then we are left with x plus 5. And here we can take out a negative 2, because we want this to be positive. So then we get x minus 2 and x plus 5. This is where we try to graph it. So here, as I see, I set up a graph right here, showing right here what they equal. So obviously x plus 5 equals 0, and x equals negative 5. So then I would put negative 5 here, and then x minus 2 equals 0. You add the 2, and then you x equals 2. So then you have another point here too. So I've labeled different areas where we're gonna have to see what we can do with them. So you have the area that is less than negative 5, which would be anywhere lower than negative 5. So then I chose negative 6 in our graph here to figure out which sides are going to be positive and which sides are going to be negative, which areas are going to be positive and which areas are going to be negative, so then we can graph the inequality. So then negative 6, if you plug it into x here, you get negative 8, which is a negative. And then with this one, we would get negative 1, because negative 6 plus 5 is negative 1. So then we get a negative. If you multiply these two together, you would get a plus. You would get a positive. So then right here, this area would be a positive. And then with the next one would be in between these two, in between negative 5 and 2. I use 0 because it's the easiest number, because I don't have to do any work here, and I can just say that's going to be negative and that's going to be a positive. And then negative times a positive is a negative. Then with this one, we just 3 minus 2 is 1, positive. 3 plus 5 is 8, which is positive. And then you get this as positive, because positive times positive is a positive. And then from that information, since we know at the start that these are greater than 0, you plug these in and then you switch them around. So then it would be negative 5 going to the left of negative 5, so anything less than negative 5, and anything greater than 2. Again, this next situation, I have taken out this portion, which is a common mistake many people do. You do not want to take out this section, because this section is how to get full credit for showing your work. And if you don't have this in your work, you will get points off for that. So here we have a different sort of equation. We have where there's going to be, at the end of your answer, there's going to be 3 different things, as I could show here. There are going to be 3 different labels: this one, and this one. It's going to be 3 different stuff. So when you get to the second step, we're going to do our second most common way of solving an inequality, which would be factoring, to factor out. And the way of factoring an inequality would be factoring. And for this grouping, we just get this, and then we can take out an x squared, and then here we can take out a negative 1, because you don't want this to be a negative. So then you have here you get x minus 3, x squared minus 1, and then from that you get here, because then you'll put the x there, boom, and then you'll get x minus 3, x plus 1, x minus 1, because these two will equal x squared plus 1, because x is squared. So then you get this, and then you that is less than 0. So then for the table for this equation, which we would set it up the same way to fix this student's mistake. We'd set it up the same way. We would have the t and the v and the y. Okay. Another common mistake people do, because I just thought of it, is that you don't ever set this to equals, because then you could by accident solve it and do some other things that will not lead you to the right answer. So never just change the sign. Keep it how it is, unless you can flip it if you're dividing by a negative. And then here, so let's write our equations out. You have x minus 3, x plus 1, and x minus 1. So here we are with TV. What we would do for our TV, for our value, let's first go this one. As you see, I already know this will be the answer at the end of the day, because we want to get the negatives. And so this is how it would go. So the first one, let's go here. So less than -1, let's do -2. So then this would be -5. I messed up. This would be -5, which is a negative. This would also be a negative. And this will also be a negative, because all of these, when you do the math, will be negative. So when you multiply, let me get my red. When you multiply, let me add a few more columns. Probably need one more, but it's fine. When you multiply, you'll get a negative, because a negative times a negative is a positive, and then positive times a negative is a negative. So then let's get this value in between here. -1, we'll just use 0. So we get a negative, we get a positive, and we get a negative. This negative times a positive will be a negative, and then a negative times a negative will be a positive. And then our second area, our third area, will be here. So we can just use 2. So we get a negative, and 2, we get a positive. And then here we will also get a positive, because 2 minus 1 is 1, and that is positive. And then we can do the last one, which will be here to go this way. And then from there we will get, if we can just do 4, then we will get a positive, and a positive. And that will be a positive. Just write it out here. Boom, boom. And from there, we can just solve right here, as we have it right here. And you will get your answer, and you will get your graph. Okay. The next situation here I have is x squared plus x is less than -1. This is where some students can get tripped up. This, there is no solution. And we can find this out by just going through every method that we can do right now. And so yeah, so let's start off. We can obviously just add the 1. So then we get x squared plus x plus 1 is less than or equal to 0. And when you try any sort of method, so let's just try AC method, which is like what we would use here, because there's only 4 different terms here. And so when we do that, you get 1 times 1 which equals 1, and you need two terms that will multiply to 1 that will add to 1. And there are no two terms because the only things that add to 1 are 1 times 1 and negative 1 times negative 1. And this will equal 1 when you multiply, and this will also equal 1. But when you subtract these, it equals negative 2. When you subtract 1, when you add them, you get negative 2. And when you add these, you get 2, 2. And that will not fit into here. You can't group because there's not 4 terms that you can add parentheses around. And so then what you would